Well, hi, friends. Well, I'm back. I have been kind of MIA because I had an extremely difficult past 3 weeks. I lost my dad. Roxy got injured. Yeah, it was pretty rough. But I'm back. So let's see what Spirit would have for us this week. Okay, first card out. Oh, the clover. The clover are our blessings. You know, amongst all of the pain and suffering, I I had lots of blessings that were sprinkled in there. So, that part of it, I show so much appreciation and gratefulness for. So the very first card out obviously was the clover. In this particular portrait, the first portrait that comes out, the upper left hand corner is the coffin. Somehow these cards know. I've lost both my parents now. And the coffin can also symbolize abandonment, that feeling of orphan. So, I can't deny those thoughts and feelings, but, the flowers are there. The flowers is recovery, it's growth, it's, rejuvenation. So, I guess I question, where are they now, right? Was there some sort of a transition into a beautiful location? My belief system is yes on that. How could there not be? If you just look at nature, even when something passes away, the decay is nourishment for the new growth. When we prune, when we remove, it allows the energy to come out in other other parts. Okay, and it's just a part of life, right? We've got the stork there. The stork is change and transformational energy. And then we have the mice. The mice and the flowers is my butterfly combination. And shortly after my dad passed away, I had seen like 3 butterflies. They were all together. So, I questioned that too. Not question it, but, I'm like, okay, we've got 3 butterflies. Oh, that was fun. Then we've got the moon and we have the mice. The moon and the mice, that is that little bit of anxious energy attached to it. Once again, I try to find the excitement or the things to, it's kind of like an appreciation type of energy as well. Don't focus on the lack, focus on, the abundance, the recovery, the positive side of it. Okay. I actually, both of my combinations here for kind of butterfly-ish are in that same portrait. So, all right. So let's see what the next portrait says. Well, we've got the bear, the tree, the gentleman, and then we have the man and the woman are in that same portrait as well. Oh, forgot my final card. Oh, but we do have the snake. So, I feel like there's been a little bit of navigational issues and a little bit of, friendships and that sort of thing. Like, there's a lot of coming and goings, and then I also feel that this kind of symbolizes a little bit of one door closes, another door opens feeling to it. I do see partnerships, so that's nice. I see 2 forms of partnerships here, and I feel like they are great collaborations and great for learning. So, everybody kind of comes into our lives for a reason, season, or a lifetime. And, there might be some people that kind of come and they go, but then they come back again. So, that's also part of life, right? We're all here to help one another. And each person can offer their own, talents and gifts into our lives to enrich our lives, as we do for them. We enrich other people's lives as well, right? So let's see what else we have. We've got the letter, the ring. We've got the house, the rider, the fox, the garden, the heart, the scythe, and the birds. So I do feel that there's been maybe a little bit of lack of communication, or communication that's been, kind of cut off, or you know, it also has that feeling of, say what you mean and mean what you say feeling to it as well. So, if you don't have something kind to say, sometimes it's best not to say anything. But also, I see in this portrait that, if you listen real carefully, people will tell, that, and I don't want to say tell on themselves, but tell on themselves is part of it. But, you can see truth and wisdom coming from, people's communicating, but you have to listen to them, so you can't always be talking over them, just genuinely be there and listen. Okay. All right. See what else. I've got the stars, the anchor, the sun, the lilies, the mountain, the clouds, the cross, and the tower, and the fish. So the fish is our abundance kind of a card, and our finance card. I do see the stars and the clouds, and I feel like that clouds and stars is my combination for, imposter syndrome is kind of what it's called, but it's basically, your value and your worth. You need to be confident in that. Okay. It's not, sometimes we're our own worst enemies when it comes to, how we view ourselves and in our capabilities and, that sort of thing. Other people recognize it more than we do, I think. But the tower is there. The tower is sort of a little bit of a leveling up. It could also be, visiting a new town, because I see the sun there too. So that kind of indicates a little bit of, going on a vacation somewhere in a new town. Okay. The stars, that's that wish fulfillment feeling. Then we've got the cross. The cross is your karmic, the things that you are here to do. It's also a spiritual card too, but it's more or less the things that we came here to do. Okay. So now let me lay them out and let's see what we have here. I've mastered how I lay these out now. And I think that if I do it this way, I can get to the corners easier and faster too, because our corners really have a lot to say as well. All right, so our upper left-hand corner is the coffin. The upper right corner are the clouds. And then we have the bottom corner as the moon, the right corner as the anchor. So I do feel that emotions play a huge role here. That coffin is, a little bit of transformational though, and it has to do with our thoughts. So just be mindful of keep your thoughts in check, because, a lot of times when we ruminate over certain things, those are the things that tend to come to fruition. Okay. So, but I do see a landing of that softer energy. It's into a little bit of intuition. Listen to your intuition. Also kind of gives a shadow vibe. Your shadow side that you need to honor as well. Honors and appreciations for sure, though. I see this as well in this mix. Got the flowers, the dog, the fox, and the mountain. The dog and the fox, they kind of, I feel like they're in the same family, but so that kind of has a little bit of a, a teamwork kind of a feel to it, especially when it's the foxes, on the garden there. Yeah, there could be some people, that could tend to be not honest, but overall, I do think that we have good partnerships. Okay. Now the mountain is there, and that mountain, that can be a little bit of a delay and challenge. So, I feel like, a lot of times we have to learn a little bit of patience, and those obstacles and challenges can be put in our way, because what's meant for us hasn't arrived yet, but also to prevent us from getting ourselves, in little pickles that we have no business being in either. So kind of like that, spiritual protection feel. Okay. I do see information is opening up, and, we have some changes coming, some decision making, and keep in mind that our crossroads is kind of a timeline change too. And that certainly has felt, to be the case for me, so much change so fast, and then you're trying to adapt to all these different changes, and all the responsibilities that come with it, and sometimes you feel a bit overwhelmed. Okay. So, try to ground yourself, get yourself in in a, either meditate or, rest and relax, unwind, but get close to nature. Nature is so healing and so grounding, okay? I know that's when I feel my best. I've taken a couple trips out on the lake on my kayak, and there's no better medicine than that. I've seen so much wildlife, and just being close to the water, being that feeling of being one with the water, that's been very healing for me. Let's see. The ring is there with the heart. That could mean that there is a relationship on the on the horizon. We've got the garden there, so that's shared spaces, that's networking, that's socializing. And the cross is there, which is karmic in nature, and it's your destiny. So I feel like, we all end up being where we need to be. Sometimes the route taken, can be a little stressful. And sometimes we make some wrong turns, but, we tend to adjust course, and we end up, going where we need to be. Okay. Nothing meant for you will pass you by, I promise. So let's see. The center card is the fox, though. That fox can be very tricky, but very intelligent. A little bit of a jokester too. Somebody who might tell jokes or tease or make fun. But it's next to the dog, so I kind of feel like that's just in good fun. Okay. There is some higher level communication, and it's of the stars. So that's that kind of means to me, let the stars be for signs, sort of a thing. Well, right now, we're in the retrograde, a couple of retrogrades going on. Those can be challenging, and they're never a good time to sign contracts or make, not to say you can't, but I feel like you really need to read the fine print if you do, and be very, don't make any rash decisions, make well calculated decisions. Okay. Let's see what else. Oh, I see unconditional love. That's where my heart space is. I love unconditionally. I don't hold anybody to a certain standard. And I think that's some people can be a little on the judgy side. Well, my view on that is, you know, don't judge others, and don't look up to people who do. So, that would be my tip for the day. Surround yourself with people who are kind and who, show that reverence for life, and have good morals and values and integrities. Okay. Let's see, what else do I see? I do see a little bit of, either time that, maybe a little bit of loss of time, which kind of has that feeling of a little bit of a regret. There should never be any regrets, but sometimes, people do. They look back and they'll say, darn it, I wish I would have done things a little differently, and not, work so much, or that sort of thing. But, like even with my father, I know he was out on doing his own thing his whole life, but I also feel that he kind of went wherever he was wanted and needed too, so that part is good, and in the final days, I had so many beautiful moments with him, so I can honestly say I have no regrets there. But children, they grow up so fast, just spend as much time with them as you can. Okay. Let's see. I do see multiple income streams, though. That's nice to see. Yeah. And then, for me personally, with the dog being in the center, I had the issue with my Roxy a couple weeks ago, and she recovered so nicely. So, in a healing, loving environment, I think that's possible. And, that's kind of what a miracle is, right? A miracle is turning, fear into love. At least that's what they say in the Course of Miracles. And I truly believe that, have a preconceived positive notion. If we always look to, the negative side of what we think will go wrong, it will. But if you have a positive, outlook, I think that you're at least setting yourself up for a better sort of circumstance, okay? Let's see. I do see a break in the clouds again, so that's nice. Change. And I do see a lot of healing energy here as well. I think health is taking care of yourself, especially with that fox in the center. I feel like self-care is extremely important. If your cup's not full, you're not going to be able to help others. And with the clover being the first card out, I feel like that's a little bit of a risk taker with the fox, and a gamblerish. So, this is a lucky feel to it as well, but a little bit of, humor. So, laughter is also, I feel like, the best, the best medicine, okay? Get out there and, maybe go see a funny movie or something. And the more time you spend with children, you get a kick out of them and animals, All right, folks. Well, it looks like it's going to be a pretty good week. I see love in the forecast. So love is also, to me, it's, passion. It's it's the things that bring you passion, right? So it's not necessarily a relationship, but getting out and involved and in with the community. And then, that's where you'll probably end up meeting someone. Meet them organically. All right, folks, you have a beautiful week, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.